the hair follicles. So the hair is also known as the pilus. This is the other official term for this structure, the pilus. Plays a role for protection against foreign substances. It also has some UV function, but really it's sensory based. The hair has different stages of growth. It begins to grow from cells at the base of the follicle, the hair bulb, and then the hair papillae contains some connective tissue, including blood vessels, that will then generally be responsible for growing out new hair. You might see this kind of fetus early on if you had held a baby before, that very thin, fine, downy, unpigmented hair that looks kind of faint. That's called lanugo. That's a very infant stage of the hair. Over the course of like 2 to 3 months, you will see it mature into a more fine-based hair called a vellus, and then eventually becomes more thick and coarse as you grow in age. So this is the anatomy of a hair. If you zoom into it, you'll see the medulla, which is the center core of that cylinder. It contains mostly soft keratin. It's also where cells are closest together to the matrix. And then on the outer layer, you have a bundle that surrounds it that's more harder keratin called cortex. And then we also have the cuticle on the most outer shell. When you classify how the hair develops over time, you can then have a lot of varieties. So coloration could be interesting because of the black, brown hair, depending on melanin. Eumelanin is the principal chemical that determines how rich and dark your hair turns. The blonde hair means that you have very little bit of eumelanin, but more of that pheomelanin. So it's just the variation of melanin that generates the coloration. When you get older and you realize that your hair loses the pigmentation, it's because of the melanin decay. So you have gray hair because the melanin has now not been present anymore. 3 phases of hair growth include anagen, catagen, and telogen. So in each phase, there's some small variations. In the first phase, in anagen, what happens is this is the most active phase where new hair is dominantly grown. And when I say new hair is grown, I mean the cells are pushing from the deeper papillae into the skin. And as it pushes into the skin, it allows you to have this new layer of root sheath to grow out. And as the cells are pushing out, they get longer and longer. And therefore, you have this newer hair kind of elongating over time. The next phase involving the catagen phase marks kind of the end of the active phase. And that's where most of the hair has ceased to grow and bulge, and they begin to die off. And this is also referred to in some books as the club hair. This is where the hair has kind of fainted off and begin to stop growing. And then the last phase is called telogen, which is going to be when the cells are pretty much stagnant